That was the first time that aha moment came. Developer and architect, the goals are usually aligned, right? They want to get to the end point, build, create, sell, all that stuff, design. But how they get there, it is completely, it's animus, it can be vicious, it can be everybody's on their own page. And unfortunately, that's the reality. Yeah, and the time. Exactly. And that's where the money is spent, time. And so that's where, working with Adam, he said, we have to be able to have these things talk to each other. The financial model and the design model have to have some language together.
This episode is brought to you by Reliance Hospitality Global, where hospitality meets strategy. Whether you're developing your next hotel, need help navigating operations, or you're looking to increase profitability through our expert consulting and business process outsourcing services, Reliance has you covered. From boutique independents to full-service brands, we help owners, investors, and partners unlock value at every stage. Visit RelianceHospitality.com to learn more, and let's build something remarkable together. Welcome back, everyone, to this week's episode of The Check-In with Brian. I'm your host, Brian Fish, and this week I have a very special guest. I'm joined by Brian Ahmes with Parafin. He is an architect, designer, entrepreneur who's been at the forefront of blending technology with real estate development. Brian is the co-founder of Parafin, a groundbreaking platform that uses generative AI to transform the way developers evaluate sites, create budgets, and design projects. With a background that spans architectural, computational design, and hospitality innovation, Brian brings a unique perspective on how creativity and technology can work together to accelerate development in today's market. Could we have another paragraph, sir?
That was a tongue twister.
Yeah,
thank you.
I usually try to do it from memory, but I wasn't going to get that from memory.
No, you couldn't repeat that if you wanted to. And I don't think I could have done it better. So thank you. I appreciate it. It's been a while. I haven't seen you in days.
I am glad to have you here today. We were able to catch up in Florida earlier this week at the LinkedIn conference. How was LinkedIn for you?
It was quite successful. I like that conference a lot. It's quick. It's the right people. It's not just aimlessly wandering around. You're there for a purpose. Get in, get out.
Right.
It was great. Very successful.
No, that's what I liked about it too. I actually met people I hadn't met before. There were a handful of people like yourself and a couple other people that I saw, but it was good to see a different group of people that I usually don't run into. We got a lot to get to today, but we have to start at the beginning. So if we can start, can you take us through your journey from when you were at the Savannah College of Art and Design, or SCAD as I have learned it's called, and then over to the firm HKS, and then when you founded Home?
Yeah, I started going to a school in Virginia. So it's weird. My first college was actually a military school. Then I decided to go to art school. So I really decided to check the entire spectrum of what college life could be like. I found one was more fun than the other. So I actually started out in math and computer science as kind of the trajectory I was going for in school, and that was at VMI. After the first year, I'm like, why do I need to go to a school that I'm being yelled at and berated at? I get that at home for free. I don't need this. So it was a great opportunity, though. It just wasn't for me. So I left there, took a couple years off. I actually taught tennis in South Florida. I used to be a tennis player. I still am, but that's a whole nother story. And then actually I met this gentleman who was one of the producers, or one of the early founders of MTV, and I forgot his exact background. Anyway, I was teaching him and hitting with him at a country club during my time working. And he said, "What are you doing with your life?" And I said, "Teaching tennis to you right now." And he said, No. He was like, "You got something else going on." And he said, "What do you want to do?" I'm like, "I don't know." And he kind of pushed me to get back into school. I just hadn't really figured out what I wanted to do. And it was kind of an outsider that gave me more, I guess, motivation and inspiration than I had inside of me. I've always had an interest in design and Legos. I have more Legos in my house than probably most adults should admit to. The Savannah College of Art and Design was an interesting program, school. I didn't know much about it, but they had an architecture program, which I thought was pretty cool. And I got to meet the coach of the team, who they have some really good athletic programs. Most people wouldn't know that, but they did. And they offered me to play there, and I got to do that, and I finished out my degree, and then I got a master's degree there as well in architecture. But while I was there, I got really into software. I really found myself trying to do things like rendering and scripting, modeling, all that stuff that you still need to do, but much earlier on. I mean, this was early 2000s when a lot of that software wasn't used as heavily as it is today in architecture and interior design and engineering. So I was doing a lot of things that were, I think, pretty new. So that kind of grew my passion more. And then I was able to find a place at HKS right after I graduated. They were interested in bringing in top talent with, you know, I'm not saying I was top talent. They were looking for talented people that have a background. Obviously,
it's okay, you can say it. You were top talent.
I was pretty badass. Pretty badass.
Yeah.
They brought me in, and I, because of what I could do with things, you know, that were more cutting edge, they wanted to bring that kind of learning and technology to the company. I mean, this company does they're still one of the biggest in the world. They do some of the biggest projects. When I got there, they were just starting to work on the new Cowboy Stadium they designed, you know, big stuff like that. And so technology is a big driving factor in those companies. You know, it's not, you can't just use AutoCAD and decide to draw something. I mean, it's very, very, very nuanced and bespoke tech. And we built a lot of stuff internally. So I worked there for about 6 or 7 years. In Dallas is where I started. While I was there, a couple guys that were my age and young, smart people, you know, that I met there, they all had an affinity for that learning as well. And we all kind of got together and we started doing competitions in the evening. We'd find architectural competitions and we started doing our own stuff. And actually it was helping. We won some awards. And then the company started seeing that, look, these people are doing this stuff in their spare time. Why don't we dedicate some resources so they can maybe do it, you know, during the company hour? Because, you know, why are they killing themselves for our accolades? And so, yeah, and
they were probably thinking too, how can we turn a profit on this?
There's a byproduct of that, yes.
Right.
But yeah, no, definitely. But you know, again, it's weird. The industry is interesting. You go into architecture not to what you see in movies and TVs. You know, architects are rich and successful. Everybody's living in, you know, a massive skyscraper and tower. That's not how it is. You're in it for passion. You're in it for, you know, just that desire to create, build, and make, you know, amazing products and buildings that people enjoy going into and experience.
Right. Well, I think people forget it's art at the end of the day.
It is.
It's not like finance or something where it's a finite thing. It's really art. It's a creative field.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, that's where it can get tough though, because, you know, developer client might have an idea, architect designer might have an idea, and you know, whose idea should you really be designing for? And it's really for the people that are going to be in the space, and right. We always have to keep that in mind. But so I did that for a while. I helped build this the HKS line, the Laboratory for Intensive Exploration, which is still around. They're amazing, good group of people, and they're solving some of the technology challenges of some of these mega projects that you see, you know, all around the globe. I think they just finished about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, LA Rams Stadium. I mean, big stadiums, but there's such custom projects. You have to have custom tools, and they just didn't exist. So that's what, you know, we were there to do. So I'm doing that. And one of my principals, I was working in healthcare. I did a lot of healthcare design and big cancer centers and stuff. He asked if I could move to Chicago and help with the new office they were starting. So I'm like, sure, why not? With Chicago, you know, I heard it's a great city. Went there, and it was minus 20 degrees the first day we got off the plane in November with my family, and second guessed that one. But when I was there for about a year and a half, my old college roommate, great friend of mine, Scott Blue, and he came to me and he said, hey, I've got an idea. I want to put hotel rooms. I want to build modular hotel rooms, but prefab modular, but in existing warehouses and spaces that are underutilized, that we can deploy them, break them down, move them to another event or another location whenever they need to. And I'm just like, okay, what? You know, you were in architecture school, but you didn't really get into that. He was in Silicon Valley, you know, so it's a very different mindset out there. He was doing a lot of software stuff. And I said, I don't know. I mean, I'll help you, but I ain't quitting my day job for that. So nights and weekends.
And was the idea that people would stay in these pods?
Yes. And I have no problem sharing the link. I still have the website for all the stuff we did. Here's where it gets funny. We were given like $1.5 million to do it.
Yeah. I mean, it's Silicon Valley.
But here's where it came from. It came from Hyatt. Hyatt Hotels. That's where it gets weird. So let me tell you how that happened. This is fun. Okay, so Scott's like, okay, we can do this. And I'm like, I'll show you how we can, really and legally and physically. And he's like, that's fine. It's just, we got to get a good deck together, a couple good slides, and people will buy into this. I'm like, it's not that. Who the hell's going to stay here? 150 square feet, no bathroom. And I'm like, oh God, this is not how I stay, but whatever, we'll try it. And so I had a friend of mine who knew a chief innovation officer at Hyatt. They were in Chicago. So I, was in Chicago. I got in front of them with my partner, and they're like, this is a really interesting concept. And at the time, some of these big firms like Hyatt, I don't know about Hilton, but I know Hyatt and Marriott at the time were starting to deploy money to some startups like Uber and things like that to kind of see what would stick, and other weird ones that we can talk offline about. But with us, they were like, yeah, this is interesting. And they said, you know what, we want you to present in front of Mark Hoplamazian, who's still the current CEO of Hyatt, and in front of the Pritzker board and other people that I had no idea who they were. And we're like, okay. And they said, just get your stuff ready. And we're like, okay. So we took a week or two, I think, put a deck together. It was 10 or 12 slides, beautiful renderings that we made, designs. But again, looked like a Silicon Valley pitch deck, not like a real estate development. Here's pro forma, here's how it's going to work. So we get in front of them. I'm wearing the suit, the tie, I'm dressed up like, when I was doing architectural work, I would dress up a little more formal. And my partner decides to wear a wife beater shirt. Am I allowed to say that? Is it a wife beater? What do you call those?
I feel like people still call them that.
Okay. The shirt with no sleeves that's really skinny up here, but men that one. And he has tattoo sleeves on his arm, tattoos and everything. And he walks in like that with me next to him. We're in front of, I think one of the two Pritzkers are in there, Mark and all these other board members. And they go, okay, guys, go. Throw up the first slide, and he just deviates completely from what we practice, and he goes, your hotels suck. And he just stops. But you know how sometimes silence is very powerful? He did
silence is very powerful.
Very powerful. And he did that, and I'm just sweating. I'm like, okay, we're going to get thrown out of the 50-story window here. And Mark looks at us, and he goes, go on. And he wanted to genuinely understand why we thought hotels sucked. So then we went through the whole deck and say, look, people our age, and this was, what was that, 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, people our age were looking for different experiences. We're not looking to go down these, the same hotels where you walk in, it's a corridor, it's just different materials and lighting, but it all has the same experience, right? You go up an elevator bank, you go down left or right, and that's about it. That was the whole point. And the idea we had spoke to them about, hey, we need to get a customer base that understands a new way of, work, travel, live. And so that's what we did. And we built it they gave us some money, a good amount of money. And we went into the West Loop of Chicago. We got a warehouse and we built 5 of these units. And we worked with manufacturers, prefab. We built it all, designed it all from scratch, manufactured it, engineered it. We actually put it on Airbnb. We had people stay there. I think we're generating about $150,000 in 1 month from people staying. And it had, I don't have the graphic. I could give it to you as a supplemental material if you want, but the renderings show it's 5 rooms all scattered around in a certain orientation with all this common space, kitchen. But the point was to allow people to come together. You don't need to be isolated in your hotel room all the time. You don't know who's next to you. You could have a mass murderer in one room. You could have Elon Musk in the other. And the whole point was, wouldn't you want to know? Maybe you don't want to know, but wouldn't it be cool if you could even pick a hotel, a floor that you're staying on? Hey, look, somebody that's a creative is staying on here. I'd love to maybe stay on a floor with creatives or engineers. Maybe you don't have to, they don't tell you their name. It's all, hidden in our software layer, but it gives you an idea that there's more to the transactional experience of a hotel. That was the whole point.
That's wild. So I'm assuming, I guess I know that the idea, the test was successful, but it never really, Hyatt didn't roll this out at scale.
I can tell you why too. That's another one. Want that one?
I'm just curious, like what was they put the money into it. Why did they determine that this was not a good idea?
Well, honestly, so that goes into my current partner, Adam Hengels. I hired him actually because one of the things that I was lacking as a designer, I didn't understand the financial aspect of the development side. That's not something you're taught in design, design school. It's you're there to create design, not understand what the cost is. Cost, what's cost? Who cares about cost?
That's somebody else's problem to deal with.
Somebody else. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I brought him in because somebody recommended him on the financial aspect of it. And he started doing all the numbers, how it would work, and actually was penciling out really healthy as a product. That was the scary part. It was starting to work really well on paper and people liked it. And then we did present to the board a few more times and they just came in and said, we don't know how to do this, guys. I mean, it looks like it could work, but we don't know how to do this. And I'm like, yeah, well, what do you need? I'm like, I don't know, $1 billion. And then, the reality was they were doing, big companies like that have shifts, and they decided to go after the health and wellness space. I think they had just acquired the Miraval resorts and spas, and they spent, I don't know, like $500 million on that stuff. So, that's what they saw because they didn't understand the new stuff. But again, Hyatt's one of the best companies I've ever actually had the pleasure to deal with, outside of, directly working with them now. It was just not the focus for them at the time. They didn't understand it. And so we were like, well, what are we going to do? I mean, I'm not going to go raise a fund to go do this I need the backing and support of a big brand. And so we were pretty early. I mean, this was before even WeWork was trying to do WeLive and stuff. So we were very early in what we were doing. Now you see a little bit more in this concept and stuff of shared space and things, especially in multifamily.
Yeah, I was going to say it's very popular. I know there's several buildings in downtown Phoenix that are they're for student housing or young professionals, where it's this kind of the same concept where it's basically everybody has their own like room or hotel room basically, but all the common space is shared amongst them.
Yeah, I mean, because you can reduce the square footage of the room and have a bigger space. The whole idea is you have, you get less, but then you get more. And that's what people like. Again, we were very early. We did have another concept that penciled out really well too for businesses. So we presented to the GSA, to Google, to Apple. They loved it. Again, didn't have the funds to go do it, but I've still got that book. It's like this thick. We made a book out of the whole thing with everything we learned, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, you know what? And I'm glad that it was Hyatt that gave you that opportunity, because I've been telling everybody the last couple of years, they're really, I don't want to say they're the underdog because they're not the underdog, but Hyatt a lot of times in the franchise community, especially when people are going to open a hotel or decide what brand to put in, Hyatt's not always at the top of their list to think of, and it's actually the resources they have and kind of what they do as a company. It's actually pretty incredible, and their guests are super loyal. Yeah. So you'd be better off putting a Hyatt property in some markets than going to, an IHG, Hilton, or Marriott any day.
Yeah, I agree.
And they do support their hotels really well. So going from that experience, what made Adam and you decide, we should build this product that will let you essentially use AI to spit out what the development costs will be and what your hotel will look like?
Yeah, really, that was a bunch of alcohol that came up with that one. Yeah. Hey. So, no, what happened was during the time we were coming up with these concepts, so I was taking some of the learnings and tools that I had built at HKS, which were, parametric tools. How can I take a room and how can it automatically adjust and reconfigure instantly for millions of permutations? So every time I would do that, he would have to make a financial model in Excel. And he would say, I can't do that fast. I can't do 1 million models, as fast as your systems are doing it. And so that was the first time that aha moment came where, okay, developer and architect, the goals are usually aligned, right? They want to get to the endpoint, build, create, sell, all that stuff, design. But how they get there, it is completely, it's animus. It can be vicious. It can be everybody's on their own page. And unfortunately, that's the reality. Yeah, and the time. Exactly. And that's where the money is spent, time. And so that's where, working with Adam, he said, we have to be able to have these things talk to each other. The financial model and the design model have to have some language together. And I'm like, well, show me how that works. Show me what are you doing with the financial model that needs certain things and, metrics. Let me understand it. Once he explained that to me, I'm like, well, that's easy. Not as black and white as that, but compared to doing things that we were doing on major projects like radiation studies, facade, energy simulations, wind. I mean, those are calculations that are in, million times more complex to compute. And I'm like, wait, you just want a financial model to talk to a design model? I'm like, well, you can do that. So we did that. And that was an early prototype. And we had just finished telling Hyatt we're not going to be doing anything else, on that stuff, I said, they said, here, take it, whatever. I'm like, we don't want to take it. And so that's where we said, the next company, we should start and come up with this concept that a design model and a financial model work together and influence one another. And that was the idea, literally working together, an architect and a developer, trying to get things to be more efficient rather than try to, chase each other around the table.
Like, it is incredible, like looking at it, how you're able to give options within really a few minutes.
Yep.
Just by selecting the site. So
that was Parafin. And that was, 16, 17. We kind of came up with that concept. I think we launched officially in 17. Well, started working on it in 17.
It's like, take me back to when you at first, like, you had the product. What was the reaction from the first person that you presented it to? Were they sold, or was it okay, I don't think this could not possibly work?
So the first product we built was very complex. It did urban stuff. So it was much more for, high-end urban hotels. And the reason we started in hotels, that's another good point I want to make. As a startup, you want to build usually pretty quickly. You want to get it to market. You want to get feedback. You want to, not overthink it. You want to get proof of concept, an MVP, minimal viable product. And so we built something quickly, small team, Adam, myself. We had another person join as well from my old company as well, which is kind of fun. And we built this product that could do more high-rise simulations, but more generic. It was boxy. It was more like, configurable shoe boxes, but didn't do the detail that Parafin does today. We found out that it was complex, but the urban projects are complex. They need a lot more hand-holding and help. And we started in hotels mainly for two reasons. Everybody's like, why don't you go to multifamily? It's, X bigger in market size and this. And I'm like, well, it's more complex. You don't start with the most complex asset class to do something. And you start with something that's, could be more repetitive and repeatable. And we found that with hotels because they have a lot of brand standards, right? They have, as you know, there's standards that a lot of people have to stick to when they're developing a branded hotel. Not only that, going out to the markets, if you have logos like Hilton, Marriott, Hyatt, Choice, Red Roof, groups like that as your main big enterprise customers, it kind of validates what you're doing. So those were the two main reasons that we went down that track. And I think it was the right one. Yeah, we started out, our first customer was actually Citizen M, which is not not a small client. I don't even know if I'm allowed to say that anymore. Are we past the expiration date on that term sheet? I don't know, but it's whatever anymore. No, but they liked it because they were doing a lot of the urban stuff, right? That's what they do. Very small container-like. And it worked for them. We got them on board. And the problem is we're like, well, how do we scale this? It's really just one company. And to try to find more that are doing that it was too hard. So what we did was we annoyed enough people at Marriott, and we were able to get to Eric Jacobs, who at the time was the chief development officer there for I believe, U.S. and Canada. And this was in 2019. And Eric Jacobs he's a visionary too. I mean, you'd be surprised that these people exist. They're there. And he goes, I like what you're doing. And we came up with an idea to pitch it to him. And he goes, I like what you're doing. But he goes, because that's not the majority of the hotels that are built and designed. That's these one-offs and, resorts and urban stuff. Those are nuanced projects. They take forever. And yeah, sure, they can make good money and stuff, but that's not the volume. Limited extended stay, select product all over the rest of the country is what we build. And that's where our customers are wanting to develop. That insight is what actually inspired the current version of Parafin. And so we went back to the drawing board and we're like, well, this is actually a little simpler. And so we came.
Because you're using the same boilerplate, right? For all those brands, typically in the limited and select service space, it's all the same prototypical design, no matter what.
Conceptually, it's the same. There are obviously nuances and deviations, but you can start out with 90%, overlap. And that's why it made a lot of sense. And so we said, well, we can not only make what we were doing better, we can go further with it. So now we can, the drawings are much more detailed that get generated from Parafin. The financial model can have a lot more insight and detail because you've got more detail now in the development of the designs that are coming out. And now you also can get to the franchise committee faster. I mean, you can submit a report and your development lead at Hilton, Marriott, or Hyatt can review it instantly. So it was really that insight that did that. So Eric's like, yes, let's do this. So we worked with them for about 6 months. I think legal was 6 months. It only took us about 6 weeks to really work with them. But
yeah, I would say with Marriott legal, that sounds about right. So.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But no, but it was a great experience. So we did that. And of course, we're ready. This thing's ready. The Courtyard brand was the first one they wanted to do. And we're ready to launch. It's March of 2020, COVID. So, yeah, trying to launch a new real estate development tool in the middle of a pandemic that nobody knew what was going on was probably the worst timing in the world.
A tool that's designed to do hotels.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't make a horror story if you wanted to, or a bad timing story. But what was interesting was because, nothing was moving, nothing could happen. We did get to meet some of Marriott's developers and some of our customers today, like PEG companies, out of Utah. They're phenomenal. They worked with us and a couple of others too. They worked with us during the pandemic. We would keep building in kind of like stealth mode. Nobody knew what we were doing. And they would give us feedback. We'd have them use it. They'd give us feedback. And what's great about what we did, sure, we had to bootstrap the hell out of it. It was painful, personally, financially, mentally, physically. But we did all that and we came up with a product that we knew when we got out of this at some point of the pandemic was going to be a game changer because everybody was going to need to start looking at developing faster. And it kind of was, it was weird. It just worked out. And the other thing that would have been bad is sometimes startups take money too early. They raise money too early. They raise capital and they have to burn. They have to spend it. I don't think we would have been where we're at if we had raised $2 million or $3 million. I think we would have spent it going down probably spin the wheel down a way we were going before that maybe wasn't right. So it worked out.
Right. Most success stories are made out of downturn times.
Yep.
And I find really interesting about this is I'm sure that you got attention from those individuals at the brand that you would have never been able to get their attention on a normal day because, and I'm going to generalize this because I'm sure this isn't exactly the case, but they went from being very busy to probably not having very much to do at all. So they could focus on you and they had time to do those calls and give you that feedback, which
that's definitely
is an investment in and of itself. Like you didn't raise capital, but
we got intellectual capital. Yeah.
So are any of the brands using the software today to double check the deals that are being presented to them? Or
the brands aren't really, at the end of the day, they're not the ones that are going to tell a developer, you can or can't. They can say you can or can't do this based on what brand you can or can't do, or hey, we don't think this is right for the market. But they're not going to go with they're not going to change their financials. They'll help guide them. But because of franchise law, they're not even allowed to tell them, hey, this is what it's actually going to cost, or this is what, your ADRs, your numbers are going to look like. The brands like it though, because if a developer does submit a Parafin output, it's all there. It's right there. You've got the design is cohesive. It's not an architect that came up with, and I'm not knocking architects, it came up with a very crude, layout that maybe it's not the right key count or it's not the right amenities. And the square footage isn't exactly tying into the pro forma. The beauty of this is whatever you get out of Parafin, the square footage down to the square inch is exactly what's tying into your pro forma. So your numbers are going to be accurately reflecting what you're trying to, submit for. So I think that's the time savings. And that's where, especially with these suburban models and products, they can easily, these can be rubber stamped. And that's what I was talking with Bill Fortier at Hilton about the last couple of months. And even at the conference at LendingCon, it's like, these should be rubber stamped. We shouldn't be reviewing a Hilton Live Smart on a 2.5 acre site. We shouldn't be spending the same amount of time to review that as we do, a Four Seasons or, a Ritz-Carlton. That should not be the same. The whole point is to get this done faster. And that's where our tool comes in.
You've already got the data. So where does the data come from though? Like I understand where the prototype builds, that information's always available.
Yep.
But given the fact that the brands aren't allowed to disclose, because let's face it, we all know, they know what the performance will end up being. Like they have enough data to be able to tell that. Yep. But that's data that they typically, I'm assuming they're not sharing that with you and they're never going to share it with a franchisee. So where are you pulling your data from to generate the actual financial model that's tied to the design?
So, and it depends because we have a bunch of different data inputs. So the majority of it is the assumptions from the developer. we're giving them a tool that they have to still use their brain for. So garbage in, garbage out. They put in crap, they're going to get crap. Which again, that's not on us. I mean, we've had, but most developers, I mean, I think, if they're truly trying to build a $20 million hotel, they're not coming at this, with even if they're coming at the first time, they usually have some good, background in what they're doing. But most of them have some of their own historical data. So they're looking at markets that they may have one or two hotels in, or it's a market that they're partnering with somebody in that they know. They may be running star reports. Now, we do pull data from a few providers. So like parcel data, for instance, we're integrating zoning as well coming up this year. So that's municipality based, that's zoning criteria. That's different than financials, but it influences the design, obviously. We have partnered with RAP, which is Rooms as a Product. They've been working on doing the hard cost construction for certain specific brands. And so we have that data in. They have a background that they source all that information. So it's a full divisional breakdown for certain brands that they have, which is kind of nice. So it gets you, again, much further faster than waiting for a GC. We have just recently integrated LARC GIS, which is pretty interesting for ADR, RevPAR information for market conditions. We're going to be trying something even a little bigger with them, and we actually have clients and some of the brands we know that have subscriptions to that platform anyway. So just knowing that other people are using some of the providers that we're putting in our system makes everybody feel a little better, I think, about where the data is coming from. Those are the main ones that are coming in right now. We are going to be doing some FF&E stuff with some other providers that'll be providing more real-time FF&E. But for the most part, the developers are going to come up with a more sophisticated back of the envelope with Parafin. Parafin's used pre-site acquisition. You may have a couple land deals you're looking at in a market. You're not going to have the architect do 6 different schematic designs on 6 different sites, especially if they're doing it for free, which they try not to do, but they're not going to be able to do that. So you have to utilize your time or your analyst time very sparingly, and that's where Parafin comes in. I mean, you could look at those 6 deals in 10 minutes if you wanted, and figure out, okay, this one I can get this many keys on, but I need more. Or my revenues aren't going to work. Things like that. That's how quickly you can do it. Then you get the ones that, hey, these are my top 2. I really want to spend more time on these sites. Maybe I'll dig in deeper with Parafin. Then I'm going to go to the architect and I'm going to talk to the brand. You can instantly swap brands too. I mean, an architect's they draw up a Live Smart for you, and instantly you want to do a Hampton. Well, boom, they can do that in our platform instantly. So it saves a lot of time, and that's where the customers find value, and so do the brands.
Obviously, this is a service for a fee, but you're paying for a system and software that is going to cost you significantly less than an hourly rate of an architect. That way you can use the architect for what they're really good at once you know exactly what it is you want to do.
That is the whole point.
Because a lot of these, especially suburban hotels, they're very prototypical. A lot of the brands these days are very hell-bent on this is how it will have to be built, and it has to be X number of floors, and the lot needs to be this number of acres. And then you've got jurisdictional issues on top of it as well. But how do you feel the tool helps that developer that maybe needs to build a building on a smaller land plot because it's the best place to put it, may need to go up a couple stories and limit the size of the building and be on that smaller land? How does Parafin help me tell that story?
Yeah, I mean, Parafin's not going to know the value of a certain location on the property, right? That information is a little more, I think, intuition from the developer and the market. But yeah, I mean, that happens quite a bit. Actually working with a new client today on something we don't need this much land, but what's the minimum that we can get if we have to go vertical? So Parafin will generate anything right before high-rise code. So nothing in the 7 stories. So pretty much everything below that. And if that's in the wheelhouse, yeah, then it can do it. So the other way we built the algorithm is that there's a few different functions, but one way is the smaller the site, the higher the result, the taller the results will be. So Parafin has some intelligence on that, where FAR is taken into account, parking ratios, things like that. That if you don't hit those requirements, it'll actually throw out or parse out solutions that Parafin generates. It says it's not going to work. So you're going to get information and designs out of Parafin that will work on those smaller sites, whatever they may be. If they're too small, I can't do anything about that.
Right. But you also need to know that up front, right? That you don't, because typically you would have paid an architect to come back and tell you after a $10,000 or $15,000 worth of billable hours to say, oh, by the way, I can't get the building to fit. It's like, well,
whoops,
great.
Still got to pay me.
Thanks. Yeah, you still have to pay me. So, which brings me to my next question. So, what has the feedback been overall then from all the users of the software in terms of how they've had to change their own internal workflows? Like, how has it made their work ultimately change? I know you touched on this a little bit about, they have to think differently. Yep. But have you heard any real success stories in terms of how they've been able to really change their workflow internally?
Well, the that's easy. It's like, where has this been for the last 20 years? That's normally the first thing that's said. The other one will be, I didn't think something like this could exist. Oh, can I fire my 3 analysts? That's another one.
I would probably not suggest that.
No. But I'm saying, like,
garbage in, garbage out, right?
Right. Well, can I reduce my my overhead, my things like that.
But to that point, that is actually a good point then, because the reality is you may not need 3 people.
Well, that's the whole point. Well, and actually coming out of COVID, that was the number one thing we actually heard. How do I do more with less? That was our kind of our standard pitch, like, save time and money. You just laid off half your firm. Are you really going to go hire everybody back? You can't. You're going to at some point, hopefully, but you still have to work your way into it. And that's where Parafin was able to do, able to allow them to get, going again without, the resources that they would typically need. The biggest thing about our customers is that their feedback and intuition and insight is what we build upon. Adam and I came from the industry. We're not just software developers, right? We actually understand the industry. We've got, he and I have probably got 30 or 40 years combined in this space, not just hotels, but design and development. But everything that we build, we think, right? You always think you know what you're doing. But we hear things that we're like, I didn't think of that. They're really looking at that in a different way. And so if it wasn't for our customers, we wouldn't actually have the tool that's always being updated and refined. They give us the feedback and we implement it. And then sometimes I have to go to the brands and say, hey guys, look, I'm getting developer Y wanting this and that. And I say, can we do this? I know you didn't say we could, but I'm seeing more of it. And I've actually had that with one of the big flags, that they didn't realize that a lot of developers were looking at doing one of their prototypes a certain way, which deviated from the prototype design. And after showing that to them, sharing that with them, they went back to their database and said, yeah, we're starting to see more of that as well. Let's make an adjustment there. So I think that feedback to the brands is just as helpful for them to know what their developers are wanting.
Yeah, which is interesting because they don't necessarily, on their side, these are all just files that are open for these sites, whereas you're essentially aggregating the data so how it's been changed. So
yes, and we don't, just to be clear, we don't sell that or share that with anybody. It's highly encrypted.
Right. Yeah.
That's throwing that disclaimer out.
In terms of features, what's one feature that a customer has brought to the table that you've ended up implementing that for you was a aha moment? Like, why did we not think of this before? Like, we should have done this.
I don't think there's really been any one big feature that was, that was eye-opening, as much as there's been some that, wow, we need to focus more on those features. Mm-hmm. I would say some of the biggest ones we've heard lately, and it goes back to your question about the elevations and renderings. This new rendering tool that we're building, which, I've gotten some good feedback from the last couple of weeks actually on more photorealistic imagery, and with the help of other AI platforms, it's been getting much easier. Integrating our models design or our designs in Google Earth with the new Cesium, the 3D tiles and everything, and seeing it in real time and scale with other buildings. They love that. Every week I've got a developer saying, oh, I just went to the city or whatever municipality, and I showed them what we spun it around live. They love it. They're really excited about it. I think that's the other part that people miss in development. You're not in hotel development. You're not just trying to appease the brands and get their flag.
Right.
You got to make sure the city is on board. And that actually is going to be harder in some instances. You want to put a what in our what? No, come on. And so by showing
I agree. I think that people forget, it actually is the local jurisdiction that always is usually the biggest issue.
100%.
Because the brand, yeah, maybe they know that it's not going to be the most profitable site, but if you're going to put the money in and invest it, they're going to let you do it. Yep. Whereas when the local jurisdictions, they may not like the fact that you want to put a 5-story gray building up that, is a mid-scale hotel.
No, we have. I was just on a call with a developer like 2 hours ago. Great development company out of California. They're putting up. They want to put up I think they want to put up a Hilton. I won't mention what brand it is, but it's a Hilton on the site. They own the land. They have the rights. They actually own the residential neighborhood as well. So it's a bigger developer.
Oh, wow.
So they can do what they want, but they are trying to be as good to the community as possible because it's like a very big family-oriented community. And like we really want to do a 3-story, even though the 4-story would be better for maybe residual value, flipping it someday, whatever. The brands want more 4-story stuff on the prototypes, right? The 3s are not as common,
Right?
And it's all for construction and things like that. But instantly, they're able to change out what that looks like in Parafin. I want a 3-story 122 key because the 4-story 120 is just too overpowering for that area visually. The homes can see it. They were able to do that in seconds, and they said that's what we need. That was so valuable for us to have those conversations. So I can't even tell you how long that would take if I had to do that manually as the architect back in the day. It would it'd be a week or two.
So what do you feel like is next for you personally? Like, do you think that Parafin is going to be your legacy, or do you think you'll be doing something else after this? Because you pivoted a few times.
Yeah, with Parafin, I think I want to. I don't know if it's a literal book, but I want to write the book on how to sell software to real estate developers. That's what we want to do. Because there's no playbook. You can talk to any venture capitalist that's put money into startups in this space, and not just what we do, but like in real estate in general. It's people always say, well, I've burned too much money trying to sell to them or trying to invest in these companies. I want to show people it's the long game. You're not in this for the typical, we're going to, fund a company, we're going to see an exit, and, it's just everything's going to be peaches and cream. This industry is brutal. It's as you know, in hotels, it's such a family-oriented community. Everybody knows everybody. So if you don't get in that, you're dead. You're not going to go anywhere. You have to get people talking. No, but I don't think.
And I feel like this community is very hard to change.
Oh yeah,
hospitality, like from the brands down to the little operator out in the middle of nowhere. I feel like hospitality's got to be the worst when it comes to change management.
100%.
And people don't like to do things differently. Ever.
No. That's a great point. It's scary. And that's the thing. Getting them to buy my software, why would I do that when I can have somebody else do something for me? Sure, it takes 5 weeks. I'm like, okay, well, what if you could do it faster and save money and maybe not lose the land deal? But I think.
Hey, this was great. So if anyone wants to connect with you and learn more about Parafin, where do we go?
Well, you can go to our website. It's parafin.ai, Parafin.ai. Not 2 Fs, not like the wax. We are not the wax. This is very different. You can find us there, or you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, thank you, sir. And everyone, we will be back on Friday with the Friday checkout. And in the meantime, be sure to go check out parafin.ai. with 1 F, not 2. They're not the wax. I like that. And reach out to Brian so you can learn more. It really is at least get a demo because it's an incredible tool. It's an incredible tool.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Brian, for having me.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
This episode of Check In with Brian is a production of RH Media Productions, hosted by Brian Fish, executive producer Tyler Alexander, marketing support provided by Sunny Timbler. Thanks for checking in. Be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss this week's Friday checkout coming this Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Reliance Hospitality Global Incorporated or any of its affiliates, partners, or subsidiaries. All content is for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be interpreted as professional or legal advice.